Today we're going to explore some writing, publishing, and promoting your own ebook on the web. And the four of us are going to share our experience with self-publishing so far. And I think each of us is probably at a different stage, and so hopefully you, as participants out there, I think we've got probably about 100 people in the chat room so far, 150. Hopefully you guys get a variety of perspectives on publishing an ebook. So I think what we'll do is we'll start by having each of us introduce ourselves, and maybe let's do name, where you live, maybe what you were doing for a living, your professional background, and maybe what you've published so far. And let's start with Sacha, because he's the guy whose idea this whole Hangout was in the first place.
Thanks. Well, me and Nathan. So
let's hold on a second. We're getting some notes in the chat room that people aren't getting the video yet.
Oh, some people are. I think.
Let's see. Maybe it's just coming on now for people?
Yeah.
Okay. Looks like people just got it. So.
Yeah.
That's good. All right.
Yeah.
Well, chat room says we have 150 people. Does YouTube let us monitor how many people?
I don't know, but I guess we'll just figure it out as we go.
Sounds
people
good.
will let us know if there's any problem, I'm sure. So.
Perfect.
Anyway.
All right, Sacha, jump into your introduction then.
So I guess I'm mainly a designer. Maybe let's say 51% designer, 49% developer, and I've wrote. So my first book, first self-published book, was about design, and I wrote that about 1 year and a half ago now. And it was a really short book called Step-by-Step UI Design, and I sold it pretty cheap for about $12. But it was really successful, so it inspired me to write a second book, and this time it wasn't about design but about coding. And it's called Discover Meteor, about the Meteor JavaScript framework, and I sold it for a much higher price. And it was a much larger book as well, and it also did really well. So yeah, I mean, the reason I got the idea for this whole Hangout thing is because all throughout working on both books, I was really inspired by what other people were doing, like Nathan, and also listening to product people and seeing what Paul was doing. So I thought it would be interesting just to get together and compare our approaches and what we do the same, what we do differently, and just get to hang out.
Perfect. It looks like some people are having a hard time seeing the video, but some people are saying if they refresh, they see it.
You can also go straight to YouTube and watch it there, if that helps at all.
If you have a link, maybe paste it in the chat.
Yes, actually there's a link on the page, so I feel like we should just continue for people who do, or unless nobody sees it.
Yeah, it's looking like nobody's seeing it. I don't know, a couple people.
Yes.
Yeah, so everybody, if you're having trouble, you can go straight to YouTube and watch it there.
Sorry about that.
All right, and I think we should probably move on then.
Yeah.
Because I don't think there's anything we can do to fix that. So. All right, so Paul, you want to jump in next with your intro?
Cool. So yeah, I am Paul Jarvis. I'm also probably about 51% designer, 49% programmer. And I've been doing that for about 15, 16 years. And a couple of years ago, I decided that it would be easier for me to write a book than to keep emailing people all the same information all the time. I was a vegan cookbook. It's called Eat Awesome. And I sold that for $5. Now it's $1. And I did that 2 years ago. And then last year, I wrote and self-published a book called Be Awesome at Online Business. And that is about web design from the perspective of a client. So if somebody's starting an online business and they need to get a developer, or a designer, developer, content people, that sort of thing. So how to kind of take your business from start to finish in building it out or refreshing it online. And I'm writing a new book right now called Everything I Know, which should be available in September, and the Kickstarter project goes live on the first day that Kickstarter Canada happens, which is September 9th.
Beautiful.
Cool. Yeah, thanks.
Nathan, how about you? You introduce yourself too.
Yeah, so I'm also a designer. I think that's a prerequisite to be on this panel. Maybe not. No. So I started as a web designer and then gradually moved to software and interface design. Worked at a startup leading their design team for a few years, and then left to sell some iPhone apps and go back to freelancing and consulting, and then wrote the App Design Handbook, which was my first really successful product, and that helped me move out of the consulting world into the product world. And then started building an audience with that, followed that up with designing web apps, and then launched ConvertKit, which is an email marketing tool to help launch and sell products. And then most recently wrote Authority, which is basically everything that I've learned over that whole process on making ebooks profitable.
Beautiful. And I'm Justin Jackson. I'm not a designer, so I'm the odd man out here. I'm a product manager during the day. I think I'm actually also the only person that has a full-time job right now. I think the rest of these. So I'm a product manager during the day. I host a podcast called Product People, and I'm about to release my first book on September 1st. It's called Amplification, and it's the lessons I've learned about getting building an audience and getting content out to lots and lots of people. So I'm at I'm at that stage. I'm just about to publish my first thing.
Cool. One thing I want to talk about is why you decided to publish it in a format that's not an ebook. So I think that's going to be interesting.
Yeah. Well, let's get going. One more piece of housekeeping before we get going. So in the chat here, I'm going to try to monitor it for questions. So if you have a question while we're talking, you can post it in there. And we also have some friends of ours at Gumroad have some T-shirts that they've given us, and we're going to give away some shirts for the best questions. So put a question in the chat room, and I'll try to get it, and we'll answer those at the end of each section. Sound good?
Sounds good.
All right, so let's start with writing, and maybe specifically, how do you choose a topic? How do you decide what you're going to write about in the first place? Let's start with Paul. How did you decide what you were going to write about?
Sure, and I mean, for me, the books that I've been writing I've started small, like I've started with tweets or emails to people, and then if people are enjoying that or retweeting what I'm tweeting, or if I find I'm sending the same email to people over and over again, then I might turn it into a blog post or an article for another website. And then if that seems to do well and gain traction, then I think, well, this could possibly be a book. So the vegan cookbook, I did that. I was writing the same email to people who wanted ideas for recipes and information about being vegan, and same with the Be Awesome Online Business, the second book. I was telling my clients basically the same thing, and I've been doing this for 15, 16 years. So I found clients were having the same issues and asking the same questions for lots of time. So I figured if I wrote a book that was kind of about web design, but not for web designers, so there's a lot of books about web design for web designers. If I wrote a book about web design for people who are just looking to do web design, then maybe that would be helpful. And then the new book is about creativity and stuff, and that's just my random ramblings about creativity and fear and that sort of stuff. So mostly the topics come naturally, and then I write a bit about them, then I write a bit more, then I write a bit more, and then they eventually turn into books. If I had to write a book from scratch, I don't know if I could do it.
Yeah. I'm just laughing because someone in the chat room asked the first question, which was, what kind of product do I use in my hair?
That would be Chase Reeves from Fizzle and Think Traffic. And yeah, the other comment of, oh God, Chase is here, good luck staying on topic, is very accurate.
He already derailed
I love
us.
you, Chase.
Oh, man.
Yeah, I feel excluded on that topic because I can't really talk about hair products.
Maybe you have like a little beard comb or something.
That's going to be our first collaborative book, is all about men's grooming.
Exactly.
Let's get back on topic. Sacha, how did you choose your topic for your book?
So although both topics are pretty different, I think one thing they have in common is they're both things I was already doing. So I was already designing an app, and I decided to write a book about that process. And for the Meteor book, I was already working on an open source app, and the book is kind of a compilation of all the knowledge that that I got through that app. So in both cases, I didn't set out. I didn't set out, thinking, oh, what will I write about now? It was more, I was already doing it, and writing a book was a good way to, well, in the case of the open source app, the app is free, so the book is a way to indirectly monetize the app and support the development of the app. So I think, for me, since I'm not a full-time writer, it's important to find a way how writing can integrate with the other things you do, and that's how I choose my topics, I guess.
Perfect. And Nathan, how about yourself?
Yeah, so since my first book was about app design, that just came about because I had lots and lots of people asking me about that topic. That's what I was. Most of the freelance projects I was doing were, iPhone and iPad applications, and so I got asked about it all the time. Lots of developer friends wanted to know how to make their apps better, and I didn't have a good place to point them. And so I decided to start writing down what I was working on. And we can come into this later, but one thing that inspired me is I worked on it just as a hobby. I was trying to help out friends, and I had no idea that you could make money off of it until Sacha published his post about the money he made from step-by-step UI design. So, thanks, Sacha. And we'll get into pricing and making money for it and all of that. But that was a big turning point for me when I realized that writing a book didn't just have to be a hobby or a labor of love. It could also be a business.
Yeah, perfect. And for myself, I've gone through a little bit of a pivot, I guess. I decided I was going to write this book called Build and Launch at buildandlaunch.net, and I had about over 1,000 people sign up for that mailing list so far. But as I started emailing them right away and asking them questions. So, what do you want to know about? What's your biggest struggle, etc. And during that time, I wrote this essay called "This is a Web Page" that ended up going really crazy, and I had a bunch more people kind of jump on the list. And just from what was coming back, I realized a lot of people wanted to know how could they publish things like blog posts and get a lot of people to pay attention. So I decided to, in some ways, shelve that idea for the first book and instead write a little mini course on the subject of amplification as a response to all these people I'm talking to on my mailing list. So for me, the topic came from just talking to the people on my mailing list and figuring out what they actually needed as opposed to what I wanted to give them.
Yep,
I don't think any of us were writers. At least I know we weren't. None of us were writers full time before we wrote our first book, which is an interesting thing to note.
Well, I think we had blogs, but yeah, we weren't.
But not book authors.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's because the books we wrote, a lot of it is our own personal experience. So if we were just writers, we wouldn't have that experience designing, developing, running apps.
Yep, that's true. So we all write on things that other people saw us as experts on in some way. So, like, Paul, you had tons of people asking you about vegan recipes and that kind of thing. And what I always tell people is think about what people ask you, and that's what people are, people in your circles are perceiving you as some kind of an expert in. Your grandma asking you to fix your computer over the holidays, she perceives you as some kind of an expert in that sort of thing. And so just always look, not that you should write a book about that, but just always look around for what people are asking you. And if you're hired for a particular job, either through clients or a full-time job, then your boss thinks you're enough of an expert in that topic that you're worth paying. And so I think there's a decent chance that you know something on those topics that other people would pay to learn.
So do you guys think it's important to be a good writer? Like, not Shakespeare, but how important is writing skills compared to actual knowledge and being an expert in a field?
Huh. Well, I think you have to at least be interested in learning the craft and getting better. I don't think I'm an amazing writer, but I like communicating. I've always liked communicating, and I think that definitely helps. What do you think, Nathan?
I think what you said about communicating is important. I think we all care more about communicating effectively than maybe writing perfectly. But if you're waiting to start writing until you're a good writer, then that's really, really bad. I had somebody email me maybe 3 months ago, and they said, I started reading your blog, I read the most recent post, and then I went back and read your very first post, and then I read it chronologically from the first post to the most recent. And my first response was to be a little bit terrified because I didn't think that anybody would care that much, but also that those first posts were really terrible. And that's actually what they said. They said, like, your first posts were really, really terrible. And they didn't have any confidence. The writing, like, it seemed like you didn't know if you were providing any value. But they said that as they read through it over the next year of posts, they could see the writing getting a tiny bit better, that I had a little bit more confidence with every single post, and that I was delivering more value to the readers with every post. So I would say start writing and use that to get better at writing, and just focus on communicating clearly, and you'll get there.
Yeah, good point on that. Just hearing you say that is sometimes I get the feeling like I'm not sure if I'm the oldest one here. I'm 33, and so sometimes I watch like the young guys in our industry, and they start, they just jump into stuff and they start doing it, and sometimes that can be a little bit debilitating, thinking, well, like, all these guys are way ahead of me, and I'm jumping in now basically at square zero. And the problem with that thinking is that means you're never going to start anything. And I think the best advice I've had is the best time to start was yesterday, and even the next best time is to start today. And even if you're an old guy that's way behind everyone else, the only way you're going to get better is by starting today and not worrying about catching up or whatever.
Yeah, and I'm older than you, but.
Oh!
But yeah, I kind of feel the same way. Like I don't think I'm a great writer, but I know I'm a lot better now than I was when I started writing. And the only way that I got better was by writing. And I think, Nathan, you even touched on this in your book, Authority, how writing 500 to 1,000 words a day, like making it a daily practice. I think you even hit like a whole year of doing that every single day. And I've been working at that as well, and it really helps to, and it's not stuff, and I think people, like I get emails from people saying like, well, I don't see you publish work every day, and I don't think that's the point. Like some of the stuff I write is crap, and I would never publish it, but the fact that I'm sitting down and I'm writing every single day is helping me get better ideas, and the more that I show up to do that writing, the more likely I am to have ideas that are worth publishing eventually. Like if I sit down 7 days a week, one of those ideas might be good enough to be a blog post, but if I sat down once and it wasn't good, then there's another week where I don't have anything to say publicly on my website or someone else's.
Yep, that's good.
And I think there's a few questions in the chat room about the process of writing. Like, yeah, you mentioned Nathan's 1,000 words, and also just which software we use, and you know, like when we start writing, what steps do we actually take?
Why don't you lead off with that?
Yeah, that's
Sure.
a good one.
So I didn't have like a fixed amount of words to write every day. I think I approach writing more maybe like design, where you start out with a sketch, and then maybe you have a low fidelity mockup, then a high fidelity, then you start coding, and every iteration gets closer and closer to the real thing. So for me, it was really like this, where I would just start with an outline of the chapters, then start filling them up, and I mean, I think every chapter, at least for Discover Meteor, so I co-wrote the book with Tom Coleman, who's a very good Meteor developer, but together we must have gone through each chapter maybe 10 times or more, just fixing things, making things clearer, rewriting stuff. So it was very, very iterative, at least for that book. But like, Nathan, do you just write the whole thing in one go, or is it also iterative
start to
like
finish.
this?
Start at the first chapter and just write straight through to the end. No. So what I do is I write a really rough outline. Probably like those outlines that you wrote in high school for essays or whatever, just indenting for different sections or different thoughts. And then what I do is refine that a little bit, and I use a program called Scrivener. And I make a blank document on the side. So I make a folder for what I think will be every chapter, and then a blank document for every section within that. And then what I do is I mark each one of them as unfinished, or as like that I haven't started them. And then when I come to sit down to write for the day, I look at that, scan through it, and see, what am I most interested in writing about? Do I want to write about, using email marketing to promote your book, or do I want to write about the writing process, for authority? And so then I just jump in, like all the topics are predefined, so then I just jump in at the specific one that interests me the most at the moment. And then one of the reasons I like Scrivener so much is it makes it really easy to rearrange those sections. And so I feel like I can try out different, the book flowing in a different way, and then I can click one button and see it as one long manuscript. And so then I can go work on all the transitions and things like that. So that's how I write. Like we mentioned, somebody mentioned earlier, I write 1,000 words a day. That's inspired by Chris Gillibo, and he has a great post. I think it's on his homepage about writing 300-some-thousand words a year. I highly recommend reading that. And I track that writing in an app I wrote called Commit. And so I have this little reminder that pops up at 4 o'clock every day and says, hey, were you going to write 1,000 words today? And so I just check it off and say yes. And it's at, I should look, it's at about 380 days in a row right now.
I have the same reminder, but mine swears at me, because that's what I need to actually get it done.
Nice.
As a beginner, I started writing my stuff. I created a text outline, and then just in TextEdit, and then I started writing right in iBooks. So I just created the sections and just started writing right in there. And about halfway through, I realized I needed to do things like collaborate, get an editor to look at it, and I also wanted to track how much time I was spending writing. And so about halfway through, I switched to Draft. That's draftin.com. And but to tell you the truth, I mean, I even with Draft, I keep switching between iBooks and Draft, and sometimes I write in iBooks and sometimes I write in Draft. So I feel like I'm still figuring that stuff out. And for myself, that idea of writing 1,000 words a day doesn't motivate me. What motivates me is when I get an idea and I'll just stay up all night writing it, and then I'll be done. And I might have 3 or 4 days of nothing. And maybe I'll change my mind, but that kind of regimented, like every single day, hasn't worked for me yet. But kind of following the passion and just writing when I feel like writing is working for me so far.
Yeah, I think I'm with you on that, because especially for a technical book, sometimes you'll write 1,000 words, sometimes you'll write 10 words and then hit a stumbling block or something that you don't know how to explain. So it's really hard to set fixed goals like this, at least for me.
I like to use IA Writer because you can't format it, and I would spend way too much time trying to pick the right typeface and the right line height and I would spend too much time tinkering with it. So I start all of my writing in IA Writer just because it is what it is. You can't do anything to it. And then once I've written it, then I bring it into something else and I start playing with it and I start rearranging it and that sort of thing. But I write, the reason I do the daily practice as well, and obviously this might be different for Nathan, is because I'm trying to get better at expressing myself through writing. So even if what I'm writing is just like stream of consciousness or just total crap, I'm still trying to get out, and sometimes I write about topics that I would never publish, but I'm just trying to get it out and because writing in your own voice is harder to do than it seems. It seems easy to be yourself in your writing when it really is difficult and it takes a lot of work sometimes to be able to do that. So the daily practice has really helped me with that for sure.
Yep.
Yeah.
One of the other reasons I hit a specific goal every day is because not doing that, I would hit a writer's block of some kind and then not push past it. I would just go, oh, I'm stuck, I'm not inspired, and I give up a few minutes in and not push past it and force myself to do it. Often I get stuck in a particular area and I switch to writing for a different project, writing a blog post, something like that. But
do you find you get less writer's block the more that you write?
Yeah. Another thing, perfect solution for me for writer's block is I go down to my favorite local cafe, either get a glass of wine or a mimosa, depending on the time of day, and I always write much more. So.
The one
I
thing
highly
that's
recommend a little bit of alcohol.
Yeah.
So. The
one thing that's really helpful for me in terms of getting writing done is having a deadline. So when I said I was going to publish this thing September 1st, that's what helps me. So I might not be writing every single day, but I know that I've got to get this thing done by September 1st.
Yeah. I want to jump in with two quick writing tips that I got from. It was Tim Ferriss and Neil Strauss did an interview. You can find it on Tim's blog, and it was done through Creative Live, and it was really good. But two things I got out of it were, one, write to a specific person. So especially when you're writing like these technical stuff, where it's really prescriptive, like do this, then do that. You can either come off super casual or really patronizing and I don't know, stuffy. And so Tim's advice on that was to write to a specific person. And so I actually wrote the book Designing Web Applications to my brother-in-law, because he was a web designer learning to design software, and he was right at that exact point. And so I didn't write it in these totally vague terms. I thought, what does Philip need to know about this particular topic? And I wrote it what I wanted him to know about that. And that helped me get past so much writer's block. Sometimes I'd even put in, Philip, comma, hit enter twice, and then start writing that section as if it was exactly an email to him. And that helped me a lot. The other thing is when you hit something that needs research, so a date, anything specific, just type in the letters TK and move right along. And that's just a way of saying, you could write to do or something else, but it's just saying like, I'm going to come back to this later, and that way you can keep your your thought process going. And the only reason for TK is because it doesn't really appear in the English language. Though it does unfortunately appear in the name of my app, ConvertKit. So it doesn't work for me. But anyway, those 2 writing tips have helped me a lot. And I think now we should do questions.
Yeah, we've got a bunch. So I'm gonna try my best. And those of you in the chat room, if I've missed something, maybe just repost it. We'll try to get to as many of these as we can. And some of these we might cover in the next 2 sections about publishing and promoting. But first question, how have you gotten over the hurdle of not feeling like enough of an expert to self-publish something people will find valuable?
If you get paid to do that, then that's a good, Nathan said that in the beginning. If you get paid to do something, then chances are you're an expert enough to write something that somebody else will want to read. So that's always a good thing to, that's the easiest way, I think, is if somebody's paid me to do web design for 15 years. So I feel confident as an expert to write about that. I've owned a business for 15 years. I feel confident that I can write about that. So that's a really good point that Nathan brought up in the beginning.
Yep, that's good.
Okay, got a question about promotion. I think we'll wait on that one. Maybe talk about what scares you most about publishing your own stuff. Was there any time where you guys were in the midst of releasing something that you had any kind of fear?
I think what scares everybody is releasing the book and then nobody buys it. Simple as that. And I mean, that's why there's books like Authority that teach you how to minimize that fear and that risk. Of course, you can make it go away completely, but there are steps, like setting up an email list or doing stuff like that. So there are steps that you can take to minimize the risk. And for my last book, I wasn't really that afraid that it wouldn't sell because I knew there was a demand. I knew there wasn't any reason for people not to buy it. So apart from that, no fear.
I think you'll always have fear of some kind. When I came out with my first book, I had no idea if people would buy it, and it sold really well. The second one, whether rational or not, I had the fear of I can't repeat the success from last time, and I was able to. And then even for Authority, I thought, okay, I was successful with design books, but nobody's going to buy a book where I talk about writing books. And I was wrong every time, but I guess my point is that I've come to terms with that I'm always going to have some kind of fear like that, and I need to push through it and launch and build the product anyway.
Same, and I think that you brought up a good point with, I think I was more scared the second book because you've already established that, oh, well, you can sell so many books, you can do this, and your name's out there as an expert or an authority or as an author or something, and then you put something else out, and it's like, well, if that flops, then I'm going to look way worse than if I put something out that nobody really knew who I was anyways, so I don't know, I think it gets worse for me every time I launch something or I release something, and I just get more afraid. But I mean, everybody brought up the same point, like I think we're all afraid in some way, and we all just kind of push past that because we know the reward is accomplishing something, and that's a good thing.
Yeah, I think that it's normal to be worried at different parts of the process and have thoughts, and I think it's actually good to talk about that because sometimes in our industry we have a lot of people that are really self-confident or seem to be really confident, and they never get anxious about anything. But the truth is, if you're like the night before launching something, you're going to have some anxiety about what's going to happen. And maybe the best thing you can do is ask, what's the worst thing that can happen? Like no one's going to die if I release this and no one likes it, right?
Yeah, James Altucher has pretty much the same thing. He says, if I try this idea, will I die? Or will I never be able to have another idea again? If the answer is no, then it's not as bad as you think it's going to be. Even if the very worst thing happens, it's not going to be the worst thing that could ever happen.
Exactly. Okay, let's keep going. What is one thing you would do differently on your next book? Who wants to take that? Nathan?
I don't know that I have anything. Yeah, I I've kind of come out with a system that I really like, and I refined it with designing web apps, and it worked well for Authority, and so I'm just kind of sticking with that. I think I will say one downside of books is they have a huge spike up front, and then sales tend to drop. And so it's not what I would do differently with books. It's maybe looking at products long term, I'd look for things that have recurring revenue or ways to build ongoing revenue into any kind of a product.
I think there will be like an evolution from learning material as ebooks to learning material as platforms. Things like Treehouse or I mean, there's lots of them now, but I think there will be even more. And I also think that tools are going to come out to make creating those platforms easier, so you don't have to develop your own every time. So I think for exactly that reason, there will be a switch to that model over the next couple of years.
Yeah. Okay, well, let's keep going then. And maybe what we'll do is answer a few more and then go to the next section. Is that okay with you guys?
Perfect.
I think this is a good one. From the consumer perspective, self-published works are a minefield of quality. What steps do you take to ensure that you have a quality book? Do you hire editors, illustrators, etc.?
Yes, I can take that one first. I have an editor that I work with for all my books, and the job of an editor is to push you to write more and to write better, and also to make you seem smarter. Because they know, like, I don't know the ins and outs of all the grammar, the English stuff. And it looks bad. Like, if you publish a book and there's spelling mistakes or typos with that, obviously that happens sometimes. But you can minimize that if you have a copy editor or an editor or that sort of thing. And I think the other thing is that because there's a lot of ebooks now, is having that social proof. It's just like if you're trying to sell any kind of product. If you have social proof, then kind of put that forward. If you have testimonials or if people are talking about it on Twitter, or if a magazine or a publication mentions you, then showing all these things that you exist and that your product exists outside of the website that you constructed is a good selling feature to show people, to give people the trust that they need to click the buy button and to put in their credit card.
Yeah, I think about this a lot, actually, and maybe one thing I wanted to talk about was if we all think the market is getting saturated for self-published books. So maybe we'll end this section on that topic. Right now I use Draft, like I said before, and they have you can hire an editor right in their interface. I think it's like $15 or something like that. So I've used that a couple times. And between that and sharing it with other people and having them read it and give me feedback, that's what I'm doing for editing and kind of quality control.
Yeah, I guess I'm a bit lucky in that my mother is a professional copy editor, and so she edits all of my books.
Nice.
And that's worked out really well. Paul, like what you said, I seem a lot smarter because of her, There's a lot of stupid stuff that would have made it into my book if I wasn't paying someone to make sure that didn't happen.
Yeah, editors make a huge difference. And even if you can't afford an editor, having a friend or two just proofread it. Like, even if you have no money and you're putting something out, have somebody else read it before somebody's paying for it to read it.
Mm-hmm. And mistakes will happen. You're not going to get a perfect book out there. That's okay. It's an ebook. You can release more versions. You didn't just kill 1,000 trees to print it, So anyway, I think you'll be fine with some mistakes, but definitely put the work in. I know somebody who hired a designer on Dribbble to do beautiful illustrations for his book, for every chapter, for the cover and everything. And so all of that plus the website cost $1,000. So if that gives you an idea of what's possible, and there's fantastic design work. So there's
that seems really cheap.
That
seems really, really cheap. So you might have to spend a little more than that, unless
you might have to. But what I'm trying to say is that you can find good people out there, and it's not going to cost you $10,000 to get your book illustrated. Yeah. Unless you have crazy, things you want done.
So, Justin, you were talking about saturation.
Yeah. But what do you guys think about that? Do you think the market for self-published books is saturated right now? I was thinking like, because there was a few people doing it, like Amy Hoy and Chris Gilbo and all those people, and now there's like grassroots people that came up, like Nathan Barry and all you guys, and now it seems like there's a lot of established people getting in. So like Addie just released a book, and so I'm wondering if we think is there too many players in this space now?
I don't
Not
think
at
so.
all.
No. I think maybe it seems this way to us because we're so like involved in this space, and a lot of people are well, it's true that there's a lot of books that are marketed to people like us, so books about writing books or books about marketing. So that specific niche might get saturated, I think, soon. But I think the vast majority of ebooks are still about, other things like actual real topics like, CSS or food or, whatever. And that will never get saturated.
I think there will always be demand to pay, $50 or less for high quality content that is really specific to a topic you care about. So instead of going through, 50 blog posts all over the internet, you just want to spend a little bit of money to get the best stuff on that topic in a PDF, and I don't think it'll become too saturated. We also tend to run in really specific circles on the internet, and so when we see something, we think, wow, the whole internet is talking about this, when in reality, it's your tiny little corner, and there's like 12 people who talked about the same thing, and people view that as saturation.
Yeah, I mean, I think the hard thing is that if you're already in and you already have an audience, it's easy for anyone to say that it might not be as saturated. I think certain niches can definitely get saturated, and Rob Walling was just commenting on this in his podcast. He says that the number of people requesting interviews from him for ebooks has gone way, way up. So he noticed a noticeable increase in the number of people that were contacting him to do either video interviews for that, like a package, or to interview him for the book. And so there could be something there, that there's a lot more people jumping in, and if that's true, and there is more saturation, it'll just mean that the quality has to go up, the uniqueness has to go up. You're going to have to offer something that no one else is doing, and you might have to be willing to pivot what you originally wanted to do for what you're hearing is the actual need out in the marketplace.
I think the key point is quality. I mean, interviews are very interesting, but they're also very easy to do. So that's why, I mean, there's a lot of ebooks that are just a collection of interviews, and unless you're a professional interviewer and you have experience doing that, your questions might not always be interesting, and that results in a lot of low-quality ebooks. And I mean, if that gets saturated, then I mean, who cares? Because it will only push people to make higher quality books and higher quality content. So overall, I think it's good.
Yeah. And maybe that's something else we have to be prepared for, is right now there's not a lot of ebook critics. So there's not a lot of people out there like critiquing books, and it's a fairly friendly space right now, but I think eventually people are going to start saying, because I've paid for a few bad ones, and
you should read some of my comments on Goodreads. There are reviewers that don't like stuff that are vocal.
I'm just saying that it's still pretty friendly, and
yeah.
And it might get a little bit more competitive in that sense, in terms of quality, anyway. Should we move on to publishing?
Yeah.
Sure.
So the first, we kind of covered this. Do we want to talk about publishing tools at all anymore?
We talked about what we write in, but maybe not what we create the end product in.
Sure. Okay, so why don't we do a quick round on that? What do you create the end product in, Paul?
I use Pages, and then I export to PDF and to EPUB, and then I run it through, I think it's called Calibre, to make a Mobi file. And I know I'm a professional designer, and I should use something like InDesign or whatever. Pages works for me, and it's always worked for me, and it's easy. I draw my graphics in Illustrator, and I save them as a PDF, and then I put them into Pages, and it works, and it's easy, and it's quick.
I actually used Pages for my first book too, and I really liked it. But then for my second book, I started out with Pages, and I started out, evaluating, okay, should I do it with Pages, InDesign, iBooks, all these apps, and then I realized that maybe the best way is just to do it in HTML. So that's what I ended up doing. Like the book, the actual content is in Markdown, and I use Middleman. So Middleman, I don't know if you're familiar with Jekyll, but Middleman is basically the same thing. It's a static site generator, and it takes Markdown files and converts them to HTML. And I can then take these HTML files and convert them to EPUB, PDF, mobile, whatever I need. And I actually really like doing it that way, although it's a little bit more work, but it's really flexible. I mean, it's just HTML, so you can do whatever you need. You can, you're not limited, to headings, paragraphs, list, whatever. You can, any CSS, any HTML you can have in a website, you can have it in the book too. Well, there are a few limits with the EPUB formats and what CSS get parsed and so on, but it's still much more flexible. And if you're starting out a big ebook project, I would really recommend considering this, because although there's a bit more technical problems up front, in the long term, I think it makes sense.
Yeah, I use iBooks Author. At the beginning, when I first started writing the App Design Handbook, I looked around to what everyone was using, sent emails to everyone I knew who had self-published an ebook, and I got a different answer from everybody, and I tried them all out. InDesign at first looked the most promising, but turns out it really frustrated me. And iBooks Author ended up being really, really great at just generating a nicely designed PDF, and it was just the right amount of design flexibility with just letting me get the book out the door quickly. So I've really enjoyed designing in iBooks Author. It has quite a few limitations, but those limitations also help you, I think. I should say that I only use the export to PDF function. I've never actually published an iBooks file to the Apple Store.
That's a good topic as well.
Yeah. I'm using iBooks Author too because it's free, and like I said before, I use draftin.com for writing the initial part. Someone just asked about usage statistics. So iBooks Author does have some usage stats in there in terms of how many words you've written and things like that. And draftin.com also has like a daily counter, and it'll give you a chart on how many words you're writing a day, etc. What about outsourcing? Do any of you do any of you guys outsource illustration? We talked about editing, but other kinds of things for your book?
I'm having somebody illustrate the cover of my next book. Yeah.
I actually outsourced the actual conversion process from HTML to EPUB and mobile. So because there's quite a few steps, and so I had a guy running through it and then write down the steps for me, so I didn't need to figure out the exact settings in Calibre. And I think it's, I mean, people, when they think about outsourcing, they usually think about, outsourcing big things like editing or illustration, but even small processes, small things that will still take you like a day to figure out, you can outsource them to somebody who has the experience and who does this all the time, and it will save you a lot of time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I outsourced video editing for the videos to go with Authority and designing web apps. But I think, and I outsourced coding up the sales page for designing web apps. Like I designed it in Photoshop and then just spent $80 to have it coded up by somebody. I mean, a good rule of thumb is whether or not you doing it would add more value. And for coding up the sales page, it wasn't going to add any more value, so I didn't do it, and it saved me, half a day or more of time. So I felt that was a good use of money.
And also, when you're writing a book, you can really figure out, okay, if I outsource this and it costs me $80, it's the cost of like 4 books. So if if I sell 4 more books, it's almost like it was free. So it makes it very easy to outsource things.
Yeah, and this is actually another thought I keep having, is that in this space now, because there's so many people interested in doing this, I think there's a lot of opportunity for people that want to get some experience in self-publishing but don't want to write a book yet. If you have some skills in design, in copy editing, in illustration, in web, anything that you could use to help authors, I think there's a lot of opportunity right now. So if you wanted to become like a professional iBooks author theme creator, I think that there's a market for that right now. And I would probably need your services for my next thing. So that's one idea. If you're looking to get into this stuff and you want to learn from some people that are really good at it, you might want to start offering services around the ecosystem here.
Yeah, I'll just plug iBooksAuthorTemplates.com. It's run by my friend Jess, and she sells a bunch of great templates for iBooks Author. So.
Yeah, that's what I'm using right now. So the other reason I chose iBooks Author is because I'm not a designer, and I wanted to be able to just use themes that were already available. And I sent out a bunch of beta releases of of amplification, and one of the comments that came back was, "Oh, it's so well designed. I didn't know you could do that." So sometimes I think there's some things you don't need to be super unique on. If there's a theme that works, it's better to get it out with that than not do anything at all.
Can we take a question from the chat room?
Yeah.
Because people have been talking about, for example, publishing the HTML version for free online and then charging for the download. There was also somebody who pointed out that Frank Chimero has his he open sourced his book's content. So yeah, I'd like to talk about that idea of giving actually the whole book for free, or also, like Amy Hoy said, the idea of publishing a book for credibility, not for money, must have been invented by a publisher.
Well, the first thing. So I was not in technology until 2008, and then the first thing I read when I got back into technology in 2008 was Getting Real by 37 Signals, and that was a book published for free online, but you could pay for the PDF, and they made thousands and thousands of dollars off people buying the PDF, even though you could read it for free online.
Is the word you're looking for.
Yeah.
Really? Did they make millions off that? No way.
Maybe not plural millions, but at least singular. Also, we've got Michael Hartle in the chat room right now. He wrote Rails tutorial, so railstutorial.org, I believe, and he's been insanely successful at giving the book away for free and charging for other versions of it. If he wants to pipe in the chat room with how much it's made him in the last year, he can do that. But I will tell you, it's a lot of money.
Well, I actually learned Rails with his book, but I didn't pay for it, so I just used the free version. I guess I should go back and buy it. But I don't know. I mean, I'm sure it's a valid strategy, but it's also kind of risky, right? Because it depends on your market and how many people you can reach. I don't know. I know that it's something like people asked us, "Oh, is your book about Meteor going to be open source?" And from the start, we knew it wouldn't be, because our goal was to make a living with that. So I don't know. Have any of you guys, would you consider publishing something like that for free, or?
I think one of the risks is that people use it as an excuse. So they're scared of sales, and so they use it as an excuse, like, "Oh, I'll put this out for free, and then see what the response is." And the problem with that is that people who will read something for free it's completely different than people that will pay for something, and the feedback you get might not be helpful at all. So I think the one thing is, to think about whether this is an excuse or if you actually have a plan for how you're going to, move forward with that.
I've used samples before. I have my Be Awesome Online Business, I think, has the first 3 or 4 chapters, so it's enough to get people interested, but then on the last page there's a link to buy it. And that's, like, I have it through a bit.ly link, which keeps track of clicks, and that the conversion on that is way better than the conversion on my sales page. So having a bit of the book for free, and then having, it's just like on iTunes where you can listen to a minute or 30 seconds of an album. You see if you like it, and then the likelihood of you buying it after you've listened to it or after you've read it in the case of a book is much higher. I also gave Eat Awesome away for free one Black Friday just because I was pissed off at vapid consumerism. And I think I gave away, I think people downloaded it 1,400 or 1,500 times. But then the next day my sales skyrocketed. So even though I gave it away, it was only for a very short amount of time, and it wasn't even a marketing trick. I just didn't feel like people buying more stuff that day. But then the next day I sold a ton more, like I sold way, way, way more. And then I got a lot of requests for interviews and publicity because of that. So I think if you are going to give it away for free, maybe it's limited. But still, I think if you're writing books, then you should be hopefully trying to make a bit of money off of it, even if money isn't the main goal. You should be, if you put all that work into it, it's worth money. So
I would say charging for your book should be the default, unless you have a strategy where giving it away for free is going to benefit you more in some other way. And, Michael Hartle, 37 Signals, Pat Flynn, he wrote an architecture guide years ago. It's made him close to $500,000, I believe, that he gave all of that away for free and then sold another version of the same thing. So plenty of examples that it has worked, but I would say that your default should be to charge unless you have a good strategy.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. Also, one thing I want to point out, if you do decide to give it away for free, I mean, think about the people who already bought it. It's kind of, you never want to, charge full price and then the next day start, hey, it's free now, and then you have all those people who, like your best fans, your best customers who bought it early, who won't be very happy about it. So
yeah, it's good to go the other direction, to reward the people who buy it first, who are the biggest supporters and who are really part of your tribe and your inner circle and the biggest fans of what you do. If you offer if the early adopters get a bit of a discount and then it goes back up to full price, I found that's worked a lot better because I've done that for one of my books, but not for the other. I did it the other way. And having it a bit cheaper to begin with to get the traction and to get the ball rolling, and then putting it back, but saying it's on sale now for this day or for this week, and it's going to be a regular price, so people know it's coming, so they can make the decision, do I want to be an early adopter and get it before anybody else is talking about it, or do I want to buy it at regular price once I see that people are actually enjoying what they've bought.
So should we talk about pricing then?
Sure.
Sounds good.
Yeah, we're into that already. So well, Nathan's talked a lot about this. Let's start with Jarvis. How do you price your books?
Sure. A divining rod, maybe. Well, I've tried it both ways because I've read. Obviously, I was reading Nathan and Sacha's back and forth with pricing high versus pricing low. So I figured I'll do one book low and then one book high. So my first book I priced at $5. Now it's $1, and then my second book is $17. So I tried it. I've tried it at different places, and the one at 17 has actually made more money. It sold half the copies, but made a lot more money at a much higher price point. But I also think the subject matter is important. Like a vegan cookbook isn't going to have as much value for people with more spending money as like a business book. So if it's a business book, you can tend to charge more. At least that's what I found. And as well, like I've played with pricing for all of them, and I've kind of found a sweet spot for both of the books. So kind of what you think is worth it to you to release it kind of does have some merit, and it's also a bit of a science and a bit of a guessing game at the same time.
Yeah, I think pricing is very, very subjective. I mean, even for the same product, the way you market it and the way you present it can have a huge impact. So I think maybe we'll talk about posting your book on Amazon later. But for example, if I see a book on Amazon, like even $10 will seem expensive, and like $20 it's double what any other ebook would cost. So it seems like a huge price. On the other hand, if I see Nathan's book for $39, it will seem like a good deal because I know there's good value and I know it will help me do my job. So the way you frame the whole context of the book is very important. So yeah, for our book, it was the same thing. Like we knew this was a book that would teach people skills that they can put to use in their job, that they can use to earn money. So it made sense to price it high. At least for the second book. My first book was priced low, and that was partly because it was much, much shorter, and also because it was my first book, so I wasn't sure what to expect.
Yeah, I think for me as a beginner, pricing's tough, and it is hard to figure that stuff out. I think what I ended up doing is, and we kind of alluded to this, is instead of me marketing this as a book, I'm marketing it as a downloadable course. And so the idea is that it's not just an ebook that you're going to read. It's going to have videos and some worksheets and some other things. And this is going to be the equivalent of you taking a course on the topic. And I priced it at $29, and I did pre-sales for $10 off. And that just seemed like, in some ways, for me, it was just I wanted to push myself to see, well, how high could I make it as someone that's starting out without going too low, but not wanting to go too high and not having any results. So.
And people are asking about how to test pricing without pissing people off. Do you guys A/B test prices or do anything like that?
I've never A/B tested pricing.
Yeah.
No, me neither. I've lowered the price on my first book, but I haven't. I don't see a good way to be able to raise the price without pissing people off, other than if it's on sale and you're clear that it's on sale.
Yeah, I don't think it's very ethical to A/B test prices. I mean, aren't there laws against that or regulations? Not that, even if there weren't, I mean, it's not very fair to customers just to charge them $10 more because they have the wrong cookie, I don't know. I wouldn't do it personally.
I think one idea of testing pricing is to just start selling stuff. And so here's an example. So I wrote this post called Just Fucking Do It, and at the bottom was actually in the Hacker News thread, I posted a little link to this thing for going into a campfire room with other bootstrappers for $10 a month, and it sold out in an hour. I said, there's 12 spots, we're just going to get whoever comes, and it sold out in an hour. And that was just an interesting exercise to say, I'm just going to put this out here. There's really nothing bad can happen from me testing this out. And I was like, whoa, like people will pay. Obviously, I could have priced it a lot higher. And so you kind of start to learn, like, oh, okay, I understand this. And the other thing that I do is I use Gumroad, and it does allow you to have to do deals. And so, like I said, I'm doing the pre-sale for $10 off, and I kind of always track, like, if I tweeted out a link, did that get any sales? If I had it in a PDF sample, etc. And you can kind of get an idea of, what people are willing to pay.
Yep. So I would say always price based on value, and so that would be a combination of what it's worth to you to do the work to put this whole thing together, and then price based on the amount of value that the reader is going to get out of it. So, for example, Brennan Dunn has a book called Double Your Freelancing Rate. He sells it for $50. You may think that's insanely high for a book, but if you raise your rate from $50 to $100 an hour, then you just paid for the book in the first hour of working at your new rate. I've read the book; it's fantastic, totally worth $50. For a lot of people, it could make them tons more money than that. And so I would say, and this is something that Sacha, you said earlier, but if you're teaching people skills that make money, it's much easier to justify higher prices. The closer you are to the money, the easier that equation is. So if you're selling fiction, it's going to be hard to sell it for $50. But teaching people design skills, $250 for a course around that is an easy sell, especially if people are using the company credit card to pay for it. Always keep that in mind. Always have an option. If it makes sense for companies to buy it, always have a way for them to do that and let them pay more. The biggest pricing win that I've ever encountered is multiple price tiers. I would say make sure it makes sense for your product. Don't just add it because I said to add it. But on the App Design Handbook, multiple price tiers doubled revenue, and on the other two books it tripled revenue. So if you know of any other areas where it's like a quick win to triple revenue, I'd love to hear them, but that's the only one I know of right now. So definitely give it a try. I wrote about it more on Jason Cohen's blog, which is asmartbear.com. I'm sure someone will paste the link into the chat. And Sacha, you actually used multiple packages on your first book, and that worked really well, right?
Yeah, so the first one I just had 2 packages, and there wasn't such a big difference between them. On the second one, I pretty much copied what you were doing. And yeah, that worked really, really well. And the way I see it is allowing people to pay how much they want to pay, right? So if I'm really rich, if my company is paying, maybe I want to support the author. So give me a reason why I can give you more money, basically. But it also works the other way around. Like maybe if I'm a student or if I have less money, have a special plan for students, have a light edition of the book. So I mean, I think that's what having multiple tiers like this is all about. It's just letting everybody pay at their own level.
Yep. Something that somebody said to me was, you would make more money if you just doubled the price of everything. Say if you sold the entire book at $99 or $250 or something and got rid of the $39 price tier. And I think they would be right. I think I would actually make more money doing that. But I don't want to exclude, there's a whole group of people, whether it's freelancers, students, people who just encountered my work and don't trust my advice yet, whatever it is, there's a whole market that I don't want to exclude. And so multiple pricing lets me optimize for the largest group without excluding too many people.
Yeah, and in fact, I've been thinking about maybe coming out with even so the first price for Discover Meteor is $39. So I've been thinking about coming out with a lower priced edition, maybe just to reach more people. And it's not so much about making more money. It's also just about reaching all those people who can't afford more expensive edition or are not sure, like you said, just want to have a way to get their feet wet before making the big jump.
I would also say that just because people are setting a trend at $39 or whatever price in there doesn't mean you should necessarily follow it. Because Sacha, I really like the example of your first book, and I actually really like the prices that you have it at now. I believe you have it at $6 and $12. Is that right?
Yeah.
So it's a small book, and you put it out in a couple of weeks. Like 3 weeks start to finish?
Like 3 weeks. Yeah.
And so writing your first book doesn't have to be this huge process that you work on for months and months and months, and feel like you have to price high to do it based on the value. You could come out with a really good design tutorial that you put a week or two worth of work into and sell it for $10, and that could be a great way to start into the self-publishing market without coming out with something huge right up front. So I would say if you're hesitant, then start small.
Yeah, I think that's good advice. Do we want to move on to promotion? We're already an hour and 10 minutes in. How much longer do we want to go?
I think maybe like half an hour more would be good.
Another 30 minutes? Okay.
Sure.
We should probably
so-
take some questions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure. Do we want to take questions around promotion, or is there other things that you guys noticed we should address now?
There's one question that Christian asked, and I get asked this all the time, and so I want to cover it really quickly, is what do you do about preventing piracy? And the answer is you do nothing. You move on. You focus on the people who are going to pay you, and yeah.
That's what I
all
am
really
in
have to
this
say.
town as well. I don't care about privacy or piracy. So privacy I definitely care about. Piracy not so much. If somebody wants to read something or get something that is anything like digital, there's going to be a way to do it. It's easier to focus on people who are going to give you money than people who weren't going to pay you anyways.
Well, I used to think the same way. I do have like one small remark is that sometimes pirated versions can appear in Google results. So if somebody Googles, discover meteor and the first result is a pirated version or even the number 4 or 5, I do think if you can do something about it, it's better.
If somebody's stealing it to read it, that's one thing. If somebody's stealing it and putting it live somewhere, then that's totally different. Like, yeah, you don't. That's not a good thing. But if somebody's gonna find it to read it, then yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you can't do anything about that. But for example, we had a guy who bought the book and then put it up on SlideShare, and it turns out he did it like he thought it was private. He just wanted to have it available to read whenever he wanted to.
Mm-hmm.
But it was public, so since SlideShare is a big site, it was pretty high up in the results. So I just emailed the guy and explained the situation, and then he removed it.
Yeah.
So yeah, just make sure that just Google your book's name every couple weeks or something.
Mm-hmm. We're getting a lot of questions about would you ever use a traditional publisher now that you've self-published? And also a lot of questions about different platforms. I'm sure you guys have seen these. There's tons and tons of platforms for writing and then promoting a book. Would you guys use any of those? And yeah, why don't we just take that one?
I think the only reason why I would use a publisher if I was doing a print book and I really wanted, like if I didn't care so much about money, but I just wanted to get the book out there to as many people as I could, have it in bookstores, then I would consider a publisher. But other than that, I don't really see a reason, because I honestly think especially for ebooks, you can do a better job yourself than with a publisher.
And it's a bit about, like, I know a lot of people who've gone the traditional publishing route, and a lot of publishers, it's not always the case, but if you're not their top dog at the publishing house, then you're going to be doing all the promotion anyways, so you might as well get 100% instead of 10% or 12% if you're lucky. And I mean, Sacha, you mentioned you would do it if you wanted a print book. My next book will be a print book, but I'm using Kickstarter to raise the money and to pre-sell a set number of copies for the next book. So it will be a hardcover, and I get to control the design. That's another thing. Because I work with a lot of authors, they don't really get to choose what the designs of their books look like. And I mean, for us designers, like, the cover is kind of important, and if you don't get to choose that, that's kind of a big deal, and I've seen that happen before. So I mean, I've talked to publishers before, and I've ended up not working with them just because I feel like I have a better grasp, and I mean everybody on this panel has a better grasp of how to market and promote ourselves. And I mean, it's a bit of an ego thing to say like, oh, my book's in a bookstore. So I don't know that many people that go to bookstores, as opposed to just like buying the book, even if it's print or digital, on Amazon.com or Barnes & Noble, or from one of our sites directly, or from somebody's site directly, kind of thing. So I don't know. I've been approached, and I'm still not that interested in going that route at the moment.
Well, maybe like if you really want to focus only on writing and do nothing else, then maybe a publisher is a good thing. But like all of us, we all like doing promotion and design and interacting with people. So maybe that's why we don't like publishers.
The days of 6- and 7-figure advances for authors are so gone, anyways. Like that's not really a reality. It's more an exception to the rule, from what I've seen with the people that I know.
Yeah.
Well, Justin, go ahead if you have something.
Oh, sorry. I was just going to move on because people are asking about Amazon and iBooks, and I know that you guys have some experience with that too. So, but why don't you finish and we'll move on to that?
Okay, so I do plan to go with a traditional publisher at some point. Not for the style of books that I've been writing, but I have a few ideas of like a marketing book that I would like to get out to a much bigger audience that I don't think I would be able to reach on my own. And so on that model, I'd probably be following more Chris Guillebeau. He's done very well with his self-published books or guides that follow a lot of the models of what we're doing, or I guess I follow a lot of what he does. And then, but he also has 2 books traditionally published. His most recent one hit the New York Times list. So I think he balances that really well. Just whatever decision you make, know what the publisher is going to do for you, what you're going to have to do, and don't go into it with the expectation that the publisher is going to promote it for you.
Well, also, like, you're probably in a much better position to deal with a publisher now than 2 years ago when you didn't have all of these ebooks. So
Absolutely.
Yeah, publishers are interested in you when you don't need them as much. That's the way the game goes.
But I would never take a technical book to a publisher because they may pay you $5,000 as an advance, and that would probably be all the money you would make off of it. So any of the 3 books I've written already would be a terrible fit for a publisher.
Mm. And what about the iBook Store and Amazon? Do you guys have any experience with them, and would you recommend it?
I have my books on Amazon and on iTunes, but they account for maybe 1% of my revenue and sales. I don't promote it just because if I'm doing the promotion, I'd rather promote somewhere where I'm going to get 95%. I'm going to get the cost of the book minus PayPal and Gumroad's fee versus selling it on Amazon or iTunes where I get 50 or 60% or whatever their percent is. So I have my books on there in case people are looking there and want to find them, they can, but they account. I think people there's an idea that if I self-publish my book on Amazon, then Amazon's going to drive sales or traffic to it. Never, ever, ever happens. Like unless you're promoting your Amazon book to your audience, nobody's going to find your book on Amazon or iTunes unless they're really, really looking hard or looking for it anyways.
another downside of Amazon is that you don't get people's emails, right?
Yeah,
So,
you don't know who your customers are.
And like for our Meet Your Book, one thing we do is give people access to an online area where they can download the book, read it online, and all that. And that would be impossible to do with Amazon because we don't have a way to know who bought the book. So yeah.
Yep. Yeah. So for me, the 2 big downsides are not getting an email address, and if you don't have any information about the customer, they're not your customer. They're Amazon's customer. And I'm used to that from selling iPhone applications. It really sucks to have people buy your iPhone app and all you know is like 12 people in the United States bought it, and that's all you know about your customers. That's a bad business model for you. It's wonderful for Apple and Amazon. But then the other thing is pricing. There's no way I could do my pricing tiers or anything that I do around pricing using those platforms. So,
Yeah, they both max out in the teens for pricing, for the max price you can set.
yeah, well, Amazon will let you go above $10, but they'll start taking 70% of your revenue.
Yeah.
So, if you're into that, yeah. But I think, Paul, what you said is really important about how you've tried it out and they're not driving you a lot of sales. And that's what most people are looking for. They're expecting that if they put it on Amazon, they'll get a bunch of sales. And the truth is that everyone I know who's done that has driven almost all the sales that they've gotten.
Yeah. Well, why don't we switch to talking about promotion now? Is that okay with you guys?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So why don't we? I mean, we said that the point is how do you promote your book? Maybe let's start with mailing list because we've talked about that quite a bit, and I think that can seem like a really overwhelming thing to people that are starting at zero. So how did you guys build your mailing list? And maybe talk a bit about the progression. Like, was it always slow and steady? Did you see a big jump with certain things? So let's talk about building a list. Let's start with Sacha.
Sure. So I've been building my list for about 10 months, I think, now, and there's about 4,000 subscribers. And the concept of my list is that I write one email per week every Sunday. At least that it was that until maybe 1 month ago, where I just got burned out and decided to take a break. But yeah, I want to go back into that groove, because it's like we were talking about writing 1,000 words a day. It's kind of the same concept. Like writing one email a week. It's something that even sometimes you're not sure what to talk about, but just the act of starting to write and brainstorming ideas helps you a lot and makes it easier for you to come up with ideas. So my mailing list has been very helpful with this. And actually, the way I started it was with the emails from my first book sales. So I just emailed everybody who bought the book and asked them. I didn't subscribe them automatically. I just sent them an email letting them know that I was starting a list and that they could join if they wanted to.
And how many subscribers did you get from the initial sale of your book?
I think I got about 1,000.
Oh, wow. So pretty big jump. So that might be one advantage to having a cheaper book to begin with, is that you got a lot of subscribers that way.
Yeah, exactly. So usually, the normal way would be to have the list and use the list to promote the book. But in my case, I did it the other way around. So I used the book as a way to kickstart the list. And what's funny is that my second book was about Meteor, so it was very specific. So I ended up creating a separate email list for that. So my first list, which has the most people, has never been used to sell or promote anything. It's just it ended up just being like a second blog, or kind of more personal blog, actually.
Yeah. How about you, Nathan? How did you build your list?
So I blogged for about a year, trying to get RSS subscribers and anyone to pay attention. And the end result of that was I had about 80 RSS subscribers after a year of blogging. Not what I would consider a success. Then I started working on the App Design Handbook, and I put up a landing page specifically for that, and started asking people to sign up, through Twitter and talking to friends and all of that. Got about 50 people. Then I just started writing blog posts related to the book, in-depth tutorials, and then that by the time I launched the book, like 2 months later, I had 800 email subscribers, just through that content promotion, and that was by far the biggest factor in the book being successful.
And was it always slow and steady growth, or were there times where you saw a spike of subscribers?
If an article got featured in on Hacker News or something, which I think happened once or twice, where it hit the homepage for a little while, then I'd see a jump of like 50 subscribers maybe in a day.
I want to point out something. Sorry, is that
go ahead.
I've had like at least 3 or 4 posts hit the top of Hacker News, and I've had my blog for close to 2 years, and I have maybe like 2,000 RSS subscribers over this whole period. And in less than 1 year, I have over 4,000 email subscribers. So I mean, it's actually, for some reason, much easier to build an email list than a blog following.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would definitely focus entirely on an email list and ignore everything else. I get flack for saying that now that I run an email marketing company. But I promise that I built an email marketing company because I learned how successful email was. And it just, based on my numbers, I ran some calculations. Email converts at about 15 times what a Twitter follower does. So anyway, I guess to finish building my list story, after the first book, I just contacted those people and let them know, stayed in touch, said, hey, I'm working on another book, and rolled that into everything I was doing with designing web apps, and tried to build a bunch more followers the exact same method. And then just kept going. Once I came out with ConvertKit, I got a lot more aggressive with giving out free PDFs and other things in trade for people signing up for my list. Things like I came out with one called the Productivity Manifesto, and that added about 1,000 subscribers. because it got shared around quite a bit. So now my whole list is at 10,000 email addresses, and that just makes launching every product from here on out so much easier.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I started both of my books. I focus entirely on a mailing list first. Like my first book, I don't even have a blog, and I have a one-page website for Eat Awesome, just because all I care about is the mailing list, and the mailing list is really what drove the sales. I did what Nathan did. I put up a launch page. I was getting a lot of interest on Instagram with my food photos, so I put up a launch page. I put a photo of it on Instagram, and I got probably 300 or 400 subscribers in a few days from that. And then the list slowly built. So when I launched, I think I had about 1,500 people on that list. But then I wrote a book about online business. So I didn't want to use the same mailing list. So I have two mailing lists now, with one for the vegan cookbook, one for my main mailing list, the PJRBS mailing list. And I found that the mailing list is like, I couldn't care less if Twitter goes away or even my blog goes away. My mailing list is really where I feel like it's easier to connect with people, because you're connecting with people where they are. Everybody's always checking their email all the time. So I found that the mailing list, like if I write something new, I share it with my mailing list before I put it on my blog, just to show them the value that they have from being on the mailing list. And I mean, I see jumps. Like I don't really write in the realm of like Hacker News type stuff, but if I write a guest article for like Fast Company or 99U or something like that, then I'll get a couple hundred subscribers that day kind of thing. But otherwise, it's just like a slow and steady build, basically.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so like I said, I think my list is about 1,000 now, and most of those came from Hacker News, from this is a web page, and that being on Hacker News for about 11 hours. I know some people don't like things like that, so Hacker News and Reddit and all that stuff, but it drives a lot of traffic. And even if you're not converting very well on your mailing list link, it's just that much traffic is going to convert into subscribers. And so for me, it's definitely helped build the list fairly quickly. Yeah, so I've seen big jumps that way. And that's basically been my whole strategy so far, is writing things that every once in a while I'll get an idea that I think something is a little bit special, and I'll try to promote that like heck and get as many signups as I can.
You put it in the Will This Go Viral app, and if it says yes, then you write it and you can format it. I totally know your secrets.
It's true, man. It's true. Just look it up.
Yeah.
And people are asking what we use for mailing list stuff. I work for an email service provider, so that's who I use. I do for WordPress people. There's a WordPress theme called Launch Effect. That's what I'm using on buildandlaunch.net, and that's been really good. It'll collect all the addresses within WordPress, and so that's one way to start collecting a list, even if you don't have a service provider. You guys want to quickly talk about who you're using?
I use MailChimp. One thing that's really cool about MailChimp is that they have an API. So for example, with Discover Meteor, we are segmenting the mailing list according to which package people bought. So that lets us send targeted emails. So if we have a promotion or something coming up, we don't need to spam everybody. And especially, we don't send the promotion to people who have already bought the book, because again, you don't want to piss people off. So this way we can only send the discount to people who haven't bought it yet, or maybe upgrade discounts to people who have bought the lowest edition. So yeah, that's one really cool thing you can do with MailChimp.
Yeah, I use MailChimp for the same reason. You can segment. You can automatically add people to your list in a segment based on what they purchased. And then, yeah, hit people that aren't on that segment with discount codes, or talk to people that bought the book if there's a new edition or something. So you have that information from the subscribers, and it does it automatically. We don't even need to do anything. It automatically puts those names and email addresses onto the list.
Yep, I use MailChimp as well. Still, I'm gradually phasing off of them just because I have ConvertKit, and it works a lot better for gathering subscribers in a lot of different ways. If you want to know about how I use that, then I wrote. If you go to nathanberry.com/email-marketing, I believe, is my detailed post on all of that. But yeah, MailChimp is really good, but ConvertKit's where I'm going moving forward, of course.
Yeah, and maybe let's quickly talk about how we format our emails. I just want to give a shout out to Brennan Dunn, because he's in the chat room, I think, and he's the one that put me on to writing email newsletters that look like emails. So, hi Justin, how's it going? And I was really impressed with Brennan's emails, and that's the format. I'm just trying to be like Brennan nowadays. What do you guys use for the format of your emails?
I like to write stories. Like I basically write a blog post. For 90% of my emails, I write up like a blog post or an article and share it with my list. On occasion, I'll share like a curated. These are like 5 links that I think you guys would like. But for the most part, I just tell stories.
Yeah, I mean, I also format the emails as plain text or really light HTML formatting. One thing I do is make sure they're responsive, because a lot of people are on mobile, and I think if you don't do anything by default, like a lot of templates on MailChimp or wherever, they're not responsive. Like if you go with the plain text, fake plain text option. So, but yeah, I mean, I don't think people like fancy HTML templates that much. So unless you have a really strong branding and it's like a corporate email or password reminder or things like that, I mean it's fine for that. But if you want it to be personal and engage people, I think plain text is probably better.
Yeah, I use plain text. I feel like it should look like I wrote it in Gmail. So I use bullets and bold and italics and links and all that. But I try to write personal emails, and so I don't want them to look like they came from a huge corporation, because they really did come from me.
Same.
So one thing in all this talk of tools, I just saw Thomas, who wrote the book Retinify, and he's done a bunch of other awesome projects, post in the chat room that all this talk about tools is important, sort of, but it's really easy to get hung up on all of that. And what you need to do is start, and you need to actually work on it. So I get tons of questions about what tools I use and how to prevent piracy and things like that, and very few about how to actually create good content and write something meaningful. So I would just say focus more on that. Though we can't talk more about tools.
Well, just before, I think we should probably wind down here pretty soon, but is there anything else on the subject of promotion that we should talk about?
I want to talk about actually selling the product. There's one thing that all 4 of us have in common, is that we sell through Gumroad, and I absolutely love them. I think they have the best checkout experience on the web, and I'm not paid to say that. In fact, I paid them a lot of money. So I absolutely love the guys at Gumroad, and they have a fantastic product. So
yeah, they have great support too.
Yeah, amazing support. So when I came out with my first book, I was trying to upload files at 1 in the morning, and I was getting emails back from them within 2 minutes. Like, they were right there to help me with anything around the launch. They've just been absolutely fantastic.
One more topic I think would be interesting is like deals and things like AppSumo. So have you guys tried that?
Yeah.
Yeah, I've used Mighty Deals, Gelato, a couple other ones, and it's most of the time when I use them, obviously you get less money because you're giving it at a deal, but you can, if you work with them, and obviously it's not always the case, but you can make the deal with them so that you get the email subscribers, or else it's like selling, like the way that Nathan said, if you sell on Amazon, you don't know who bought your stuff. So if you can get that information from them, but I've used Probably 4 or 5, and it's resulted in at least 500 or 600 books sold each time. And obviously, I get a lot less money. But if I get the customer data, that's really all I care about for that.
Yeah, so I've done them with Mighty Deals, AppSumo, and Deal Lotto. A couple deals with each one. They've been fantastic to work with. AppSumo moves the largest volume. And, you know, again, I make a lot less money, though still I'm at least 25 grand made from all of those deals combined. But I get a lot of people added to my newsletter. So when people go through the checkout process, I just have a checkbox saying, like, do you want to get more tutorials and design stuff from Nathan? And I leave it checked by default, but maybe 10% of people uncheck that box. But then I feel good about contacting them about, you know, sending them other tutorials, information on other books. And that's added a lot of people to my mailing list. Oh, so I guess I will, to make it clear,
you can do that, actually.
Yeah. My one rule with those deals is that I have to at least give the customers an option to get on my list. Otherwise, it's not worth it for just the money.
Yeah.
And is there anything else we want to cover before we wind things down?
I think we should take a bunch of questions and just stay on. Maybe I'd kind of like to stay on for the next 20 minutes or so answering questions. I feel like there's a lot more than we've actually had a chance to answer.
For sure.
Yeah, I'm good to go till, say, 7 o'clock Pacific.
Okay, so why don't we wind down the official part here let's just quickly tell people where they can find us on the web, and then we'll stay online for another 20 minutes.
Sure, so people can find me at sachagreif.com or at Sacha Greif. And my 2 books are Step-by-Step UI Design and Discover Meteor. So go check that out.
I'll go next. PJRVS.com or PJRVS on Twitter, and my new book, Everything I Know, is out in January, and the Kickstarter campaign for it will be launching on September 9th. So if you follow me on Twitter or are on my mailing list, then you will hear from me when that happens.
Yep, so everything I do is at nathanberry.com. You can follow me on Twitter, but it's way better if you get on my email list. Just go to my website, click on newsletter, and you can sign up there. And my books are The App Design Handbook, Designing Web Apps, and Authority. But if you're interested in this kind of thing, then you should check out ConvertKit, because it's got everything I know about email marketing and building lists and all of that baked into a product. So check it out, convertkit.com.
Beautiful. So I'm at MIJustin on Twitter, and my mailing list for my books and products and stuff is at buildandlaunch.net. So if you want to sign up for the list there, buildandlaunch.net. Perfect. Let's do some questions.
Yeah.
Here we go. Let's see here. Can you guys talk about how you handle taxes from book sales and revenue? Do we want to talk about taxes right off the bat?
I give all the data to my accountant, and he does it. I don't know how to.
It's actually really, really simple. You just count it as revenue, and you pay taxes based on that revenue. Like, there's nothing fancy that happens.
Yeah, if you freelance, it's exactly the same. It's exactly the same. You show what your revenue is, and then, like in Canada, because I'm incorporated, I have to have a chartered accountant. So he has to do it for me, but he just takes all those numbers, and if it's a website that I did or if it's a book, it's no different. You pay taxes on it the same.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, apart from the fact that I'm French and living in Japan, and I sell my book online to U.S. customers and all that, is pretty much the same.
The bank account in the Caymans?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Here's an interesting. What would you do if you woke up with your excellent book ready to publish, but you've lost your list and no one knows you?
I would take sections of the book and start giving it out in blog posts, And at the end of every blog post, I would ask people to hop on my newly created email list. Oh, and then I would promote those blog posts like crazy. Emailing everyone possible, trying to get them republished on Quora, Medium, Lifehacker, Smashing Magazine, wherever else, and just go from there.
Oh, writing guest posts is also a great way to promote your book. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
So a point on guest posts. Always have a strong call to action at the end of your guest posts. What happens a lot is people just put up a guest post and then hope that someone will click on their author bio or something like that. And what I find is that you can't really link directly to a product. But for example, I did a post on product launches for Smashing Magazine, and when that ended, at the end of the post, I had a little link saying, if you want to learn more about product launches, I put together this free email course called Mastering Product Launches. Go sign up here. I don't think Smashing Magazine would have let me, put in a hard sell for Authority or ConvertKit at the end of the post, but they were happy to let me give away much more free information to their readers. And so in that 15 email course that people sign up for later on, if that eventually sells Authority or ConvertKit after delivering a ton of value, that's fine. So that alone, that Mastering Product Launches course has netted me like 1,700 email subscribers, and at least 500 or 600 were from that one Smashing Magazine article.
Yeah, another good thing is custom landing pages, because you can put links in your author bio typically. So if I write an article for somebody, I can create a page on pjrvs.com and have that page saying like, welcome Fast Company readers, here's some other articles you might like. Oh, and I also wrote a book. So it's still in your bio, but you can create a page custom for each of the people you write for, because it might be a slightly different audience. Like for me, I have a bunch of different audiences. So if you create a custom landing page in WordPress, you can do that in a couple seconds, basically. Like add a little bit of content, add a couple links, and then link to whatever related product you have.
Yep.
Yeah, I think this is exactly what I'm talking about in my book, Amplification. And for me, like I've had stuff republished on Lifehacker, and it's been viewed over 100,000 times. And I think I've maybe had 3% of those people have gone to whatever was in the footer. So I personally actually haven't had a lot of success with things on other platforms, so things like Medium and guest posts and all that stuff. The most success I've found is you find the biggest network online where people are, and that's where you post your own stuff on your own platform, and that's been the best for me. That drives the most traffic. And that gets me the most email signups.
Well, I think one important point is that when you do guest posts, they have to be about the subject of the book. Like the closest they are, the better. For example, for my first book, I wrote a guest post about comparing options to sell the book. So things like Gumroad, Pulley, digital delivery, and it's not exactly the subject of the book, but it let me. I mean, there was no way to avoid talking about the book, writing that article, and people wanted to see what I was doing. They wanted a real-life example, so that's why they were clicking on the link to see how I set up Gumroad, how I set up, Pulley. So people have a reason to click through and go to your site. If you're writing an essay, no matter how good it is, if you're just plugging unrelated stuff at the end, the only reason people have is just if they like you, like if they want to do you a favor, they'll go check out your stuff. But usually it's not enough.
Yeah, I change my bio for every guest post that I write to make it contextual to the article and to what I'm trying to get them to do afterwards. That seems to work for me quite a bit.
I would say try to write the one link that you want them to click on, try to write it into the conclusion of the article.
Yeah.
And if that can make sense, where the logical next step is to click on that, then do that. And if there's a chance the editor of the site may take it out, but at least you tried. Just make sure it delivers a lot of value and is not asking for a sale right then.
I think this is a good question. How do you stay authentic, true to who you are? There's a lot of be like me stuff out there, but what's a good way to not come off as a well, they're saying a jerk, but how do you guys deal with that? Like,
what if you're authentically a jerk?
AKA, who's that grumpy programmer? Isn't that his whole thing?
Yeah.
What do you guys think about that? Like, is there anything about how do you stay authentic while you're writing? Is there any advice you have on that?
Keep writing. That's what. Or read what you've written. If you sound like a total like marketing dickbag when you read it back, then you're probably not being real to what you've written. So read it out loud.
Like Nathan, you were talking about communication earlier, like how to be a good writer, be a good communicator, and I think it's kind of the antidote to sounding like a jerk. Is usually it's very hard to be a jerk and be a good communicator at the same time. So if, on the other hand, if you're a good communicator, you're probably not a jerk. So that's what I try to aim for. Like, is what I'm saying clear? Am I going to the point? And if I do that, usually you can manage to stay authentic and true to yourself, I think.
Yeah, I think that if you write to an individual, it's much harder to be a jerk.
Well, unless you don't like them. Unless you hate them.
Yeah. So I always try to write to someone specific, and that helps a lot. Then I know that it's useful. I know that I'm not coming across as a jerk. I think that one thing that can be hard, and I've struggled with this a little bit, is when your products start making money, and in some cases like a lot of money, then I've found myself having a tendency to only work on things that are going to make me money, or try to one-up what I've done before, instead of just sitting back and thinking like, okay, it's okay that not everything I do needs to make me money, you know? And so once you get a list and some level of notoriety, just be careful that you're not trying to cash in on it all the time.
By the way, a message to our listeners, please pay $20 after this is over.
I think one thing Amy Hoy is saying in the chat room is that you kind of attract the people that, so if you're a jerk, you might attract jerks. And one way to think about this is, what kind of person do you want to attract? Like, what kind of reader do you want to attract? What kind of people do you want buying your products? What kind of people do you want, saying that they're affiliated with your product? Like, I love, this guy's books. Well, if it looks like, they're all people that you don't want to hang out with, you might want to change kind of what you're putting out. To be honest, I have to check myself on this all the time. I think I look at, if I look at my writing, a lot of the times the first draft can be very self-focused. And the way I turn that around is I just say, well, similar to Nathan, like, who am I trying to help and how can I actually help them? And putting yourself in a position where you're trying to help people, it almost turns everything around. It changes the tone. It makes you seem not condescending, all that kind of stuff. And I found that helpful.
I think that's a problem with a lot of sales pages, is they're focused on the person who's doing the selling instead of focusing on helping the people that they want to buy the product. So having a sales page that's more focused on alleviating some point of pain with the person who might be buying something, as opposed to telling just your story or saying that you wrote this book that's awesome, then it kind of doesn't build enough context for somebody to actually want to click the buy button. Whereas if you're saying like, this is how this product can help you, as opposed to just saying like, yeah, I wrote this good book, please buy it, it's awesome.
And we have someone asking Nathan to, could you summarize your point about what happens when you start making money? I'm not sure what he was saying there.
Oh, I think what I was saying is just that be careful that once you start having a little bit of that success, that you don't just continue chasing that. Make sure that you're providing value instead of looking to make a buck in every direction. So.
Does anyone distribute their books to companies or universities to get the word out and spread influence? And he, in brackets, he has distribute for free.
People have asked me to do that. I've had, I think, 2 emails about it, but the emails came across as so odd and unprofessional that I don't think I even responded. But the pitch was something like that of like, we're with the university, can you give it to us for free? And I think if it had been well written, and it just threw up a bunch of red flags and was weird, so I just didn't respond. But if it would have seemed legit, then I probably would have done it.
Yeah, for us, we have a lot of people, students and student organizations contacting us. The hard part is, knowing who's a student or not and having some kind of policy. It would be great if there was like an online student card or something, and you could just say, hey, okay, you're a student, get the discount. But right now, I feel it's kind of hard because, what about people who study on their own, or what makes, some students are rich, some are poor, some can afford the book, some can't. So it's kind of tricky to know who, how to discriminate and who should get the book free or cheap or not. But yeah, generally, like if we get contacted by students or universities or companies, we're open to giving out the book for free or a sample.
Yeah, I've done volume licensing for companies and things like that at a discount, and that's been I don't have a problem doing that if somebody emails me and wants to buy 20 copies or 30 copies or something like that. I don't have a problem giving a discount for that.
Yep.
We actually have a question about that. Like, what's the best way to set up a team license or volume pricing? Do you want to address that?
Sure. I had a link on my website for a while saying contact me for volume pricing, and that was all it took. And I don't have that link on there anymore because a few people took me up on it, but not very many, so it didn't really need to be there. But I don't know. I don't really care either way. For if people want a discount if they're buying it in bulk, then by all means I'll work something out with them. It's similar to what I did with the deal websites. Is they were going to sell it to a lot more people than I could reach, so they got a discount because I get less money from them. So.
Anyone else want to talk about team pricing?
Questions as well.
I don't have any more to say on team pricing, except that Patrick McKenzie did it well for one of his courses, so ask him about that or read what he has to say about it. Somebody asked, do you ever do boot camps or workshops as a kind of spin-off? And I haven't done any. I've done some online workshops with moderate success. Other people have done it pretty well. Brendan Dunn and Amy Hoy have done those. And I'm going to experiment with some in-person workshops in London and in Boston in October, and so that'll be fun. The London one's sold out, but if you want to come to the Boston one, email me. So I will write up about that, after I do those, and it's an interesting way, but I would. If you want to do online stuff, I would go read what Brendan Dunn has to say about doing workshops and all of that for the same audience, because he's, I think, doubled the revenue from his books off of doing workshops. Have you guys tried any of that?
I've spoken at events like meetups and stuff, but that's all.
Yeah, I'm speaking at an event in the spring, but I'm not really for me personally, I'm not that interested in becoming a speaker or something like that. So I've never really, I get offers to do that. I'm not really that interested in it. I've taught a bunch of people's online classes, been a guest speaker on a ton of classes, online classes and online things. But as far as in-person stuff, I'm not really that interested in traveling or doing a speaking circuit, so that doesn't really interest me to do. So I'd rather be writing.
Yeah, I think that is actually one interesting thing, is that none of us are really on the speaking circuit. I know, Nathan, you've done some speaking, and I've spoken at a few things too, but I wouldn't say that we're really in that circuit. Most of the promotion we've done has all been online, right?
Yeah.
I don't think it's a good way to sell books necessarily, but it's a really great extra revenue source if you're charging for a workshop, or if you're just going to speak at a conference. I gave a short talk at MicroConf, and then Amy Hoy invited me to speak at Bacon Biz, and I just had so much fun. It was a great experience, and to me that was a huge benefit of writing a book, is that when I went to MicroConf, instead of standing in the corner awkwardly talking to one or two people like I normally do, I had people who came up and talked to me, and that totally transformed what a conference was like for me, and it was really, really fun.
And someone was asking me if the meetup I did resulted in sales. Probably maybe like 5, 6 extra sales, but not enough to pay for the cost of travel and all that. So it's mostly for fun and also to interact with people in the community, and I mean I think that's important because at the end of the day you're selling the book to actual human beings, and it's nice to not just view them as emails in a list and dollars in your PayPal account, but also like real people.
Yep.
Okay, should we take maybe one or two more?
Yeah,
Yeah.
let's do 2 more.
Okay. Did you guys notice anything else that we should look at?
All right,
quick?
everybody ask your questions really, really quickly. And,
One good question I think was whether it's a good idea to package services with the book, like
Oh yeah, I saw that one.
website reviews or a Skype call or consulting. Personally, I think it's not a good idea. I wouldn't package anything that will take up my time with the book, just because you don't know how many takers you'll have. So I mean, maybe it will work really well, and you'll end up having to do 100 Skype consulting sessions, and
That's
you
what
probably don't want to do
happened
that.
to me. I had that as a package with my book where I was doing consults, and I had to turn it off pretty quickly because I just got in, like I couldn't get my other work done. And that's not something that, like, I like doing them, but it's not something that I want to just do. And it was starting to take up all of my time. So yeah, I agree. And even with like doing things like Kickstarter, it's the more you can do that's digital where you don't have to be present for it, the better it is for like selling it in volume. So if it scales, you're still not having to be present in that. So if you can offer value in things that are, like I know Nathan has like video interviews and things like that where you can package a lot more value without having to be there and do the discussion. Maybe if that's like a really, really top tier for that. But yeah, I had to turn that off because I had consulting and it was taking too much time.
Wow, we got a lot of question.
Michael Hartle just made the point: charge enough so that if there are a lot of takers, you're okay with it. And I think that's good. If you want to throw on $1,000 an hour package, then I don't know, go for it.
Okay, so the other one, there's one that says, "Who wins the free shirts?" And I think we'll just, if you can just email. Do we have an email for this, Sacha?
People can just there's a contact form on the landing page for this Hangout, so people can just email us through there or hit us up on Twitter, and basically everybody whose question we answered will get a free T-shirt from Gumroad.
Yeah. So if we answered your question, contact us.
Yeah.
Yeah. Should we cap it off at a certain number?
I don't think we answered that many questions, so it should be okay.
Okay. Yeah.
Probably
That
not more
sounds-
than 3,000 T-shirts, let's say.
Yeah. So fill out that form, and we'll get you a T-shirt.
All right. Well, I think we should probably wind this down. We could probably go forever.
Yep.
But I just want to thank Sacha and Nathan for getting this going, and for inviting Paul and I, the token Canadians, to be a part of it. I want to thank everyone that was hanging out in the chat room, and everyone that watched live. That I know that there were some technical difficulties. We're going to repost this whole thing on the website, so you can go back and watch it there. But yeah, this is. Amy asked if this was a success, and I think this is a pretty big success. We've had a lot of people that are interested, and so I think we're going to try to do it again, but probably with different people, and have some other folks involved that can kind of do something similar, but offer their perspective.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of very interesting ebooks authors out there, and a lot of them were in the chat room today, so I'm sure we'll find takers if we want to do this again.
Yep.
Perfect.
Cool.
Well, thanks everybody.
Yeah,
We'll see you
thank
guys
you,
later.
everybody.